terms of all the groups who've mobilised to support this really vital demonstration. I see every day the appalling impact of Tory austerity on our communities. Women who can't leave abusive relationships because there's no suitable housing for them and their children. Overcrowded families. People who face a constant struggle to make ends meet. People working 3 jobs who are constantly exhausted. And we see public services on their knees. Local councils essentially becoming insolvent because there's inadequate funding. Community organisations forced to cut vital services because they don't have the resources. The reasons everything seems broken are not found within our communities, but in political choices. The solutions come in working together to say enough is enough and to demand better. My great-grandparents came to London in search of a better life, like many thousands before and after them. I'm so proud to represent a diverse community and to work alongside people from many different backgrounds. I know there's millions of us who will not allow the likes of Tommy Robinson in the streets or Reform and Company in Parliament to attack our colleagues, our friends and our neighbours. These are our people and we will take a stand for what's right. Across the country, there's so many groups of us working together to oppose racism, bring our communities together. In faith groups, in trade unions and in local campaigns. Solidarity, together we're stronger and together we will win.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Our next speaker is Rob Panton, Disabled People Against God. Give one warm welcome to Rob.
Hello people and welcome to Disabled People Against Drugs. I've only been given 2 minutes to tell you what I think of Tommy Robinson and his nasty Nathaniel Nazi thugs. There are a bunch of fascist, brain-dead thugs who need washing down the sewer where rats belong. Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon, let's call him by his real name, or as my friend James Scott Howard refers to him, the Weatherspoon Enoch Powell. Whatever you call him, he is nobody with nothing worth hearing. So why do I spend so many weekends roaming around the city and town streets shouting his nonsense down? I do it because he is dangerous. As a student of history, I know that if you do not shut down dangerous nobodies, they can turn into dangerous somebodies. I am not only an anti-fascist, but I am also a disabled person. Disabled people have a great fear of fascists. The legacy of Acton 4 is burned into our collective memories. When 10,000 of disabled people got wiped out during the Third Reich, alongside millions of other seen as expendable, they coined the phrase useless eaters to describe disabled people. Echoes of those rhetoric can be heard today which is why I say, well, that you should join us to say, Tommy Robinson, fuck off our street.
Thank you so much, Rob. I'm sure we all echo that message. Okay, next, I'm really honoured to announce someone who probably needs no introduction. If you've been on a protest against Tommy Robinson, you'll have seen her speak, I'm sure. Next up, we've got Dr. Louise Rowe.
Hello, you gorgeous people. Why are we so much better looking than the far right? I don't know. More bubbles, more bubbles. We stand on the shoulders of giantesses here today. People don't know how women have always fought against fascism. Tommy Robinson is asking women to stand with him. I nearly said Tommy Robinson is appealing to women, but he definitely isn't, is he? God. But we've seen some misguided women joining with him. Right, this is a disgrace. He does not speak for us. He is not our protector. He can't even protect us from the rapists and sex offenders in his own ranks. And believe me, there is a long list. I've got a list of 70 plus convicted far-right sex offenders, including his own friend Richard Price, who he called a hero, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about some brilliant anti-fascist women you might not have heard of. Ethel Holdsworth in 1920 was an anti-fascist organiser. But because she was working class and a mill woman, you probably haven't heard of her. My friend B.T. Orwell, who only died last year at 104, because anti-fascism's good for your health, was there at Cable Street with loads of Jewish girls, schoolgirls, who snuck out of their houses against their dad's orders and grabbed whatever they could as weapons against the fascists, including pepper pots. We stand on the shoulders of Idel Lola Carroll, who was driven partly to her death by harassment from Tommy Robinson and his team. That's how much he supports women. And I want to send you a greeting. I'm in part of a small group called Survivors Against Fascism. We say he does not speak for survivors of sexual abuse. I want to send you a greeting from my friend Caitlin Spencer, a survivor of grooming gangs who rejected Tommy Robinson, and when she refused to let him use her story for his racist agenda, his team told her to kill herself. That's how much he stands for victims. We say we will not stand with you, Tommy Robinson, we stand against you. Thank you.
Thank you. We stand against you. I'm really, really proud to introduce our next speaker. Someone, a long-standing anti-racist, a long-standing anti-fascist, someone that stood by the people. Please give warm welcome our beloved independent MP, Jeremy Corbyn!
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And what a pleasure it is to be on this platform with such great friends and comrades. And particularly thank you to Robert Punton for what he just said and reminding us that when the Nazis in the 30s went after the Jewish people, went after the Gypsy Roma traveller community, went after the LGBT community, they also went after the destruction of all people with disabilities. Robert has reminded us of the need for unity of all people, all groups, all organisations in opposing fascism at every turn. And that is why we're here today, because there are apparently fascists on the streets of London today. All our communities are here, Jewish, Muslim, Black, Asian, all ranges, I would imagine, of political opinion. And we're here because we oppose racism in any form. And we're opposed to the politics of the denigration of minorities and people from particular countries. I would never condemn somebody for coming from Bangladesh or coming from anywhere else in the world, because that only leads to fear, it leads to division, and it leads to a horrible place for those people that do come from those communities. But when you start to look behind the headlines, read what the media says and the analysis they give of their quotes problem of refugees within our society, I then think to myself of the people I've met in Calais, the people I've met who have travelled by all manner of means, bus, truck, lorry, walk, rail, anything they could do in order to get from Afghanistan to Calais, in order to try and achieve a place of safety. They're desperately hungry, they're desperately poor, they're desperately frightened, and they just want somewhere secure to live, free from police harassment and free from fascist attacks. And then they use whatever means they can to get in a boat to cross the channel and hope they're going to be able to survive in this country. They are the victims of the war in Afghanistan, just like others are the victims of the war in Libya and Syria, Iraq, and so many other places. In a century's time, the heroic journeys these people have made, traversing the whole continent, evading police, dodging barbed wire entanglements, just trying to get to a place of safety. In 100 years' time, their journeys will be taught in school books and said how brilliant and heroic they are. What an achievement it was. In the same way that, quite rightly, the work of Harriet Tubman in running the Underground Railroad to get slaves out of the slave states to the north in the USA is now a revered part of American history. Can't we just fast forward and start with a sense of humanity to these people that are victims of wars that this country has put a great deal of money into? So let's look instead at safety for those people and not this sort of pan-European attack on people who are victims often of pan-European policies. I've only got a couple of minutes, so I just want to say one other thing. This question of fighting racism is to me an absolutely obvious one. You fight racism because racism is an absolute evil in any form whatsoever in our society. So you don't have to tolerate other people. I hate the word tolerate other people. You have to respect people and admire their differences, whatever they might be. But it's not a contradiction to also bring up the economic questions that we're faced with at the moment. This week, Parliament had the opportunity to pass a very simple amendment to the government's programme, which was to end the two-child benefit cap. That would have taken several 100,000 children out of the most desperate poverty and would have cost about 1.4 billion to do. They voted it down, and that is to the shame of Parliament. I will always vote to end that cap. I will always vote to try and bring justice and reasonable standards of living to all children within our society. But it's also about wages, it's also about housing, it's also about education, it's also about privatisation of the health service. If a government, any government anywhere in Europe, fails to deal with the issue of the crisis of falling living standards, the crisis of poverty, the millions that access food banks all across this continent, then the blame culture against minorities and refugees and others will take over. That is the atmosphere in which the far right and the fascists thrive. So our campaign is yes to oppose racism in any form, but it's also for a more decent, more equal, more inclusive society that gives hope to all people in all circumstances. That is what unites us together. And I'll finish on this. Over the last 6 months particularly, but over the last years especially, many of us have marched because we want peace. We want to see an end to the killing of Palestinian people. We want to see an end to the war in Gaza. We want to see peace come there. But those marches have brought people together from a huge range of communities, societies, and all over the country. That is the political movement that will beat fascism. That is the political movement that will bring peace. That is the political movement to bring justice and equality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy Corbyn. All right, thanks so much, Jeremy. And Jeremy will be joining us on the march. Okay. I just want to announce our next speaker. Our next speaker is here representing the union who's all here today. They're from the LGBT plus committee, Scottish TUC LGBT plus committee vice chair, and the co-convener of Trans Pride Scotland. So we're really proud to announce Sarah Croswell.
Hi there, thank you very much for Jeremy. I'm really not sure. So thank you for inviting me to speak today. My name is Sarah Croswell. I am proud to represent Unite here today. I am a Unite rep and vice chair of the STUC LGBT plus Workers Committee. I am proud to stand up to racism, sexism, disableism, ageism, homophobia and transphobia in solidarity with you all today. We stand together, united and collective, in support of each other, in support of tolerance and respect and decent living wage and investment in our NHS. We stand together against austerity, public sector cuts and scapegoating of migrant workers. We stand together for women's rights and rights to gender identity, for women's safe spaces, trans rights and gender neutral spaces. There is no conflict in our union because we refuse to be divided and we refuse to allow employers to take away the hard-fought for collective rights for equality for all. I have a message for Stephen Yaxley Lennon and the bunch of far-right, Andrew Tate-loving, self-hating, incel movement, preaching sad, small and nasty demonstrators in Trafalgar Square. We are organising our unions, organising our communities and organising for unity and solidarity. You are not welcome in our communities. Your message of hate and division has no place in our society. We will pursue unity over division and will consign you to the margins and to the dustbin of history. Thank you. Solidarity!
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is David Rosenberg from Jewish Socialist Group. Give warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Greetings from the JSG and from the wider Jewish bloc. Our group was founded in the 1970s by people who cut their political teeth as teenagers in the 1930s, battling poverty and fascism. And those things always go together. Fascists always exploit economic misery and offer false solutions that pose a direct danger to ethnic minorities. We rejoice that at the recent general election, many racist Tories who voted for the hostile environment against migrants and refugees lost their seats. But we cannot ignore the fact that Farage's far-right Reform Party won 5 seats and 14% of the national vote. And despite the landslide achieved by Labour, the combined Tory and Reform vote outstrip Labour. Labour has already ended the Rwanda scheme. Good. But Yvette Cooper is busy creating her own version of the hostile environment, promising a summer of immigration raids, targeting undocumented workers and what they call failed asylum seekers. Dozens were sent back to Vietnam last week. This is another Windrush scandal in the making. We must be clear. No one is a failed asylum seeker. No one is illegal. And in our contingent from the Jewish Socialist Group today are people whose families came here as so-called illegal immigrants. We should be worried. We should be worried that Labour is just as committed to austerity as the Tories they replaced. Austerity is the incubator of fascism. If poor and struggling people cannot see their standards of living getting better while the rich get richer, they become prey to those who will scapegoat minorities for the problems they suffer rather than the economic system that protects the rich. Tommy Robinson is an irritant, a chancer, an opportunist, capable of whipping up hatred and violence, and he's exploiting this opportunity. We pose that, but we must not lose sight of the bigger picture. Le Pen in France, who the Popular Front outmaneuvered her, but she has won more seats in Parliament than she had before. And of course, Trump is waiting in the wings to be the president again in America. The key to defeating the likes of Tommy Robinson is not simply opposing mass mobilizations, but consciously building anti-racist and anti-fascist majorities in our local areas up and down the country. Finally, today our Jewish bloc will march against Tommy Robinson. Next Saturday, we will march proudly for Palestine, because the fight against racism, the fight against apartheid and fascism and war is indivisible. No pasaran.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. Okay.